Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are advancing the cause of constitutional freedom and liberty, raising the profile of great constitutional conservative candidates across the state of Louisiana, and day by day, steadily, relentlessly, inexorably, and courageously draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You are the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for. And you know that we're only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, your friendship, your financial support. And if you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please do that at freedomstate.us. We would also love it if you would help us get the word out about the State of Freedom and help spread the reach. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the whole interview or whole episode over on our YouTube and Rumble channels. And links to those, as you know, are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge Parish Chapter is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend and take back their parental rights at all levels of government. To learn more or to get involved with Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge, email momsforlibertybatonrouge@gmail.com. That's moms, the number 4, Liberty Baton Rouge @gmail.com. The email address is on the Patriot page of our website, freedomstate.us, and it's in the show notes. Welcome back to the rest of the week ahead. Today we're going to look at the bills that are coming up in the legislature on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. It's jam-packed. Thanks in advance for sticking with us. We got a lot to get through, but I know that you want to know what's happening. Okay, well, on to Tuesday, folks. It's a long week ahead of us. The next couple bills are in the House Health and Welfare Committee, and the first one is House Bill 813. This one is, I think, very, very exciting for a lot of people. It is going to just make it, I guess, statute that prescribing, administering, and dispensing drugs for off-label use is permitted, which, frankly, Chris, it really is already permitted, right? Like, we talked to Dr. Kat Lindley. She talked about off-label use, as long as things are FDA approved, has always been the right of doctors up until COVID, basically. But this is going to make that provision in Louisiana state law as well.
Absolutely. And it's so unfortunate that because of this COVID tyranny that doctors were hamstrung and unable to simply practice medicine. You know, doctors have always been able to prescribe off-label medicine for uses other than what they were specifically approved for by the FDA. That's why they're doctors, and they should always have that flexibility. But unfortunately, doctors were so coerced, so beaten down about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and other medications during COVID that really they were afraid to prescribe it because it was off-label. And they didn't, and a lot of people died because of it, unfortunately. But this bill will absolutely prohibit any licensing authority, any board, the Louisiana Department of Health, CDC, any of them, from taking any adverse action or retaliating against or prohibiting in any way a doctor from prescribing FDA-approved medication for an off-label use. And it's, again, so often when I look at these bills, Danielle, I think to myself, on the one hand, I'm so happy that the legislation's here. On the other hand, I really sort of tremble when I think about the state of a society that would require legislation to protect a doctor against this kind of authoritative tyranny.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, Chris, we have seen so much this session, bills that are being brought, and it's not just the Louisiana legislature, right? It's our federal government as well. They're bringing laws that sit on top of other laws. Like the problem is not the laws. The problem is the enforcement. The problem is the recognition of the laws that exist in many cases. And I would point to this one as that. And it doesn't mean that I don't think we need it, because our state has proven that we absolutely do. But I just think it's disgusting that, we don't need to keep wallpapering the state with more laws. We need to actually respect the ones we have.
We need to respect the ones we have, and we need a return on the part of these freaking tyrants. And I'm sure it's going to take a miracle, but we need to return to basic, axiomatic individual freedom, sovereignty, and liberty. That's what we need. And instead of a society in which, a few elite organizations and very powerful organizations, both national and international, are steadily trying to strip us of our individual freedom and recreate a society that they think is what they want. And part of that, unfortunately, is trying to subject doctors to a certain protocol that they think they should be following, because the WHO always knows best, right?
Right. Well, obviously the WHO knows best because Tedros is not a doctor, and he should be dictating from on high what everyone else should be doing. I'm so disgusted with that man right now. But anyway, we'll move on, but continue on the topic of fallout from COVID. House Bill 822, being brought by Representative Egan, is basically making it so that if you are a blood recipient, if you need a donation of blood, you can know and you can indicate whether you get mRNA vaccinated blood or not.
Yeah. I mean, it is, it's, if you want to receive a donation of blood or a transfusion that has the COVID shot, or don't want to, it's your choice. And anybody who donates blood to another person, they have to indicate and state whether or not they received the COVID shot. It's kind of amazing to me. I thought the COVID shot was what do they call it? Quick and effective, safe and effective.
Safe and effective, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's safe and effective, why do we need legislation whereby someone who is giving blood has to warn the potential recipient about whether or not they received the COVID shot, if it's so safe and so effective, and it's not the poison many of us have always thought that it was?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a sad state of affairs all the way around. But I am grateful for it, because people deserve the right to know what they're getting, and they deserve the right to say whether or not they want it. So this is more informed consent.
Amen.
All right. And you know what? We'll just keep on that theme of COVID. And this one is House Bill 958, coming to the House Insurance Committee on Tuesday. And it would prohibit, this is by Representative Amade, by the way, it would prohibit financial incentives or penalties that would encourage healthcare providers to administer vaccinations. Chris, did you see any of that during COVID going on?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So many doctors were under so much pressure and given so much economic incentive to do the vaccine, to administer the vaccine, all kinds of incentives and cajoling and so forth, hanging the carrot out in front of them. This bill will prohibit any health insurer or any healthcare conglomerate from providing any economic incentives or any incentives whatsoever upon doctors and healthcare providers to administer any vaccine, not just COVID, any mRNA vaccine. So we're very, very pleased to have this. And gosh, do we need this? Yes.
Yeah. And, I'll jump ahead a little bit, Chris, to one that I meant to cover earlier but skipped over, and that is House Bill 312 by Representative Owen. And his is trying to create a path for ivermectin to be sold without a prescription. It's going to move for floor debate on Tuesday.
Yeah, and the issue, according to what Representative Owen said, he's looking for a path to get it done, but it's difficult to get it over the counter because it is an FDA-controlled medication. And so how this is going to pan out, we don't know for sure. but it could end up being very difficult to get this over the counter, ivermectin, as long as it's FDA controlled, according to what he said. So he's going to continue moving forward and see if he can get it across the finish line. But right now, he's having some difficulty with it.
Yeah, which is a bummer. But Chris, as you mentioned,
which is all the more important the reason why we have Edmondson's bill.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. You'd mentioned to me earlier, at least, if this one can't get across the finish line, that Representative Edmondson is bringing this off-label use bill that should support the writing of prescriptions that are needed off-label.
And if that passes, then we're going to be in very good shape.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going over to House Criminal Justice Committee. There's a couple of bills that are kind of coupled together. So House Bill 414 by Representative Carlson and House Bill 545 by Representative Amade both pertain to the crime of obscenity, and one is in public libraries, one is in public school libraries. I think they're trying to see if we can't get the most out of it, you can at least get what you need, is kind of the way I was looking at this. Chris, do you want to talk about these a little bit?
Yes, it is. Both of the bills basically from now on will say public libraries, either public school libraries in the case of Representative Amade, or just public libraries generally in the case of Representative Carlson, will no longer be exempt from the obscenity laws. In other words, if you violate the obscenity criminal law against obscenity with what you're pushing in these libraries in terms of the literature there, the books, pamphlets, whatever it is, you can be prosecuted for obscenity, and you're no longer going to get the traditional public library exception to prosecution. Very, very important. Now, as you said a minute ago, Amade's bill deals just with public school libraries, kindergarten through 12, whereas Carlson's deals with public libraries generally. They're both good bills, and to the extent that public libraries would include public school libraries, which I think probably is the case, Carlson's bill hopefully will get through. But both of them are good bills, and believe me, public libraries no longer, with all of the smut that we're seeing, particularly being exposed, unfortunately, to children in library, worthy of an exception to the obscenity crime.
Yeah. And that song is ringing in my ears. If you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. So hopefully we will get both what we want and what we need out of these bills, but we shall see. And similarly situated is another pair of bills, House Bill 850 by Representative Mike Johnson and House Bill 895 by Representative Chuck Owen. Johnson's bill, they're both anti-squatter bills. Johnson's, I think, Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, goes a little bit further. It goes beyond residential property into all immovable property. So that could be your business or, something else, just property in general, perhaps. And Representative Owen's bill is residential property specifically.
Right. And I think Representative Johnson's bill really probably is the stronger bill because it does cover both residential and commercial property. And it will allow immediately property owner goes to the sheriff with a petition establishing that this is his property, this is my property, I don't want this individual on my property. The sheriff would be authorized to immediately remove the squatter from the property rather than have to go through some civil proceeding and take 5 to 7 to 8 days to evict him from your property. This would actually be a crime that would be included in the criminal trespass statute that would allow you to get someone off of your property probably within 24 hours. So it's a very, very good piece of legislation, and we need it. And I don't think that this is an issue yet in Louisiana, Danielle, but from what I'm reading and hearing, it is absolutely an issue in other parts of the country.
Yeah. And it's, hey, look at this. Look at us. Preemptive legislation. And honestly, Chris, I don't know how preemptive it is whenever you see it happening elsewhere. It's like this is like trying to get a fire put out before it starts. I guess it is preemptive. I guess it's preemptive, but it's hard to call it preemptive whenever the train is coming.
Well, you know what? It is preemptive, but it's you know what, that I can see the light of that train coming down the track, baby, and we've got to do something now. That's one of the things that I've never understood about these Democrats. They don't seem to have any clue about the idea or the concept of preemptive legislation. Many of them just don't have. In other words, if the water is not just pouring through their front door, then they don't see the need for any legislation.
Chris,
it's just kind of odd to me.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not just Democrats.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
You would have to remind me. I was falling into a blissful trance thinking that all Republicans are conservative, but you always abruptly lull me out of my illusory state of existence.
Slap you silly. Slap you silly.
Well, you're trying.
All right.
Trying over here.
Next up is just one bill that we're keeping an eye on right now in House and Governmental Affairs. This is House Bill 800 by Representative Beaulieu, and it is it's calling for a limited constitutional convention. And, Chris, you and I have talked about this quite a lot over the last couple of weeks, just, what ifing, gaming it out a little bit. And it's hard for us to come down on whether to support it or not. We don't really know what it will be, but it's definitely one to watch. So we had to mention it because it's a potential thing that could be happening sooner than later.
Right. And we're talking here about, amending the Constitution, by way of a constitutional convention. That's a very, very big deal. Citizens need to be involved in that. Citizens need to be able to know what's being proposed, because constitutional amendments fundamentally affect citizens' lives. And so I don't know whether there's time enough to really put something together that's going to be meaningful and where the citizens will really have an understanding of what's going on. I don't know. But I don't know that it can't be done either. One thing I do know is that if there is a constitutional convention, our group and others across the state are going to be pushing very hard to include in the Constitution a provision that will provide, as a matter of fundamental constitutional law, in our Constitution, Louisiana's right to nullify independently any act of federal tyranny, any act of the federal government that is unconstitutional as independently determined by the state of Louisiana. The doctrine of nullification etched into our Constitution, and I will work very hard to ensure that it gets in there.
Yeah, and Chris, if memory serves, I believe this is the bill is calling for the convention to begin on or around May 20th, which is just, 5-6 minutes from now, basically. And also happens to be while the legislature is still in session. Kind of makes me wonder if that's why we're so jammed up with so many bills moving through right now, because people are a little concerned about what's going to happen if this all kind of collides at one point. But anyway, we'll see how it shakes out. We'll keep you posted on as we learn more and as this bill potentially makes moves this week. So yeah, that's all on the convention.
Yeah, and we're gonna, like I said, a constitutional convention. And this is a big deal, but we're gonna play it however it comes, and we're gonna try to use it to the advantage of our citizens, the ones that we speak for and represent.
Yeah. Next up is a bill coming to Senate Judiciary C. It's Senate Bill 420 by Senator Hodges, and it creates the crime of election fraud or forgery. And Chris, this is a pretty thorough bill. When I first heard about it, I kind of just had a snippet on it, and it was pretty discreet what I thought it was, but it's quite a bit bigger than that.
No, any election-related information, personal information that a person submits to the registrar of voter, to the clerk of court, that is false in terms of their immigration status, their name, their background, anything is considered criminal fraud. And if they assume an identity that is not their own or try to present information that is false, that is forgery, and the penalties would be very, very significant. Substantial number of years in prison and substantial fines on this. So I hope people who are thinking about trying to defraud our electoral system here, or trying to register to vote under false pretenses, or lying about your immigration status, I hope you understand that it will be a crime very, very soon in the state of Louisiana, for which you could suffer very significant penalties and fines.
Well, I'm so grateful for that. And, you think about this bill and you think about Representative Farnham's bill cleaning the voter rolls, and that really creates a lot of change in the state in a very short period of time.
I'm telling you right now, and we need it.
Yeah.
We need it because of what's going on at our border, and the fact that our president is both apparently literally and figuratively catatonic.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen reports that the White House is trying to send out federal representatives to register people to vote in the states. And that's of all way outside of their scope of authority, and it's completely unconstitutional. And we know that the people they're trying to register are not citizens in the first place. So I don't trust that as far as I can throw it. And this goes a long way to helping prevent that. I did call, Chris, you may have seen on our State of Freedom Twitter, I did call for Nancy Landry, our Secretary of State, to join Mac Warner and the Mississippi Secretary of State, whose name is escaping me, in their strong rejection of the Biden administration's attempt to tell them how to register voters or to insert themselves into the voting registration process. She did not reply to my tweet, but we shall see.
I can guarantee you that she got the tweet. There's no question about it. And bills that we're seeing coming down tell me that our legislators, a majority of our legislators, understand the risk and understand the threat we face with this invasion of our country. And all of these bills, quite frankly, the ones that are going to election integrity here, like Hodges and others, are specifically, I think, with a view to protecting our state against what's going on, which is quite alarming.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we have made it all the way to Wednesday, folks. So y'all are doing great. Stick with us. Okay. Next up, House Health and Welfare Committee on Wednesday morning. This is a super important bill. I think we touched on it early on during the session, but it's now finally coming into committee. This is House Bill 256 by Representative Dodie Horton, and it would close an important loophole in that bill, Representative Furman's bill from last session, prohibited transgender surgeries for minors. This one is making it so minors, it closes the loophole related to minors' consent for medical procedures. Obviously, they need parental consent, but in the state of Louisiana, that's not the case. I think Representative Horton had this one on the schedule before, and then some things got shifted around, so now it's this week.
Exactly. And I couldn't believe it because Paige Lowry told me last year during the session that she said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" She said, "Do you realize that minors right now can go into a doctor's office or to a hospital and basically say that I feel like I have something wrong with me and can get surgical procedures done, get medicine, any kind of protocol done basically without having to get their parents' consent?" I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me." So she showed me the law where that was exactly the case. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. So basically, this bill, this legislation, whereas important, is really going to correct that and make sure that any surgical procedure, any health care that's provided to any minor in the state of Louisiana is not done without the informed written consent of the parents or the legal guardian of that minor. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. If it's an emergency situation, then they don't have to get parental consent right at that moment. Or if it's to provide prenatal care or pregnancy-related care, they don't have to get consent at that moment. But in any other situation, any kind of elective procedure or anything like that, absolutely have to have the parents' consent or the consent of the legal guardian to do anything with a minor. You'd think that that's pretty much a no-brainer. But Danielle, again, it's the day and the age in which we live, where we have a state that is doing everything that it can and a government that is doing everything that it can to become the parents of minor children, to influence them in ways that are, well, let's just say not very wholesome.
Yeah, you're so right. And this this has to pass through House Health and Welfare. That's all I can say. It's you think back to when we were in school, and if you wanted a Tylenol, you needed. I don't know if they'd even call. I think they would call my mom, and she could say, yeah, you can give her a Tylenol, but to say that you can go in and have any kind of surgery, that's just crazy. So I'm grateful for Representative Horton bringing this bill. I hope that this goes a long way to saving some children from long-term harm.
Absolutely.
That's really what this is about.
Yes, indeed.
Next up is a bill that we alluded to earlier. It is in House Natural Resources and Environment. It is House Bill 729. We've been following this one for a little while, or aware of it for a little while. It's Representative Carter is bringing it, and this would remove eminent domain authority for carbon dioxide sequestration. Chris, we did already talk about Brett Guyman's bill that would do that, or is in that neighborhood, but this is a stronger bill in your view.
Well, I think it is a stronger bill because it doesn't make any exceptions. Representative Carter's bill categorically repeals eminent domain for carbon capture in Louisiana. It simply cannot occur anymore. And to that extent, it's obviously a stronger bill. And I absolutely hope that this passes. I'm going to testify in its favor. One of the issues is that there's so much federal money being thrown at carbon capture sequestration. I think that, unfortunately, even in the eyes of some of our weak Republican legislators, they're looking at the money, and they're not, unfortunately, looking at fundamental property rights of Louisiana citizens. And that is horribly sad. And I said the same thing last year. I'm hoping this year that enough people will be there and enough pressure will be put on these Natural Resource Republican Committee members so that they can wake up and say, you know what? I am supposed to be representing the average citizen of Louisiana, and it is wrong to allow a private corporation to expropriate private property for this carbon capture racket so they can make a bunch of money and basically wreck people's land, which is exactly what's going to be happening here. It is my job to protect the property owner from this. So maybe they'll have an epiphany and wake up and do their job.
Well, Chris, I think Representative Guyman's bills last week have gone a long way, or will have gone a long way by the time this gets heard. So the timing of this bill coming out after his unitization bill, where he carves out a path that, he's worked with industry got on board with it. So hopefully there'll be not only some recognition from the legislators that this is a good bill and a bill that protects property rights, but hopefully there will also be less negative pressure from the industry hammering down on them from every angle, and we can get this done.
I hope so. And either way, we will know how they registered their vote. And information is power.
Well, that's true. That's true. And information goes a long way when it's time to reelect people.
And perhaps even before.
That's right. Okay, next up is an absolute slew, Second Amendment related bills. So if you or someone is a fan of the Second Amendment, you may just want to send them this segment, if nothing else, because there are a ton of bills that are going to impact the way that the Second Amendment plays out in our state. So the first one is these are all going to House Administration of Criminal Justice, by the way. And the first one up is House Bill 62 by Representative Danny McCormick, who's a huge, huge champion for us for the Second Amendment. And his bill is called the Second Amendment Preservation Act. It really, Chris, you said asserts state sovereignty.
Absolutely. And the bill, Danny McCormick is such a warrior when it comes to the Second Amendment. And this bill is absolutely properly named. It is the Second Amendment Preservation Act because it prohibits any Louisiana law enforcement officer or public officer of any political subdivision anywhere in Louisiana from enforcing, attempting to enforce, or giving any material aid or participating in the enforcement of any federal act, executive order, administrative order, rule, regulation related to firearms or firearms accessories or ammunition, whatsoever against any law-abiding citizen. This bill is basically telling the federal government, stay out of our business. And if any law enforcement officer in Louisiana or public employee does not stay out of our business and tries to enforce tyrannical federal gun regulations, they can be subjected to penalties and fines up to $50,000 per occurrence. And any citizen whose Second Amendment rights are violated because of a violation of this law will have standing to bring an action for injunctive relief in the parish where the violation occurred. It just doesn't get any more powerful than this legislation. Also, he asserts qualified immunity will not be asserted as a defense. And I understand why it would not be, because every law enforcement officer, once this bill's passed and promulgated, should know, I'm not going to mess with the Second Amendment in Louisiana, and I'm not going to do the federal government's bidding in the state of Louisiana in violation of citizens' Second Amendment rights. So this is a strong, strong bill. It's a great assertion of state sovereignty when it comes to the Second Amendment, and I hope that our Republican legislators have the insight and the guts to pass it.
Who would be against it, Chris?
You know what? That's a great question. You would think, certainly, you would think that no Republican in the legislature would be against it.
Well, and let's be fair. There were a couple Democrats, like Representative Travis Johnson, who stood up and spoke very passionately about concealed carry. So I think there are some Democrats who could support it as well. I think everyone should support it because you think that they took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Did the legislators take an oath to uphold the Constitution, Chris?
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah,
they all take
so.
an oath.
Yeah, I thought so. So you would think
to uphold and defend the Constitution.
You would think that not voting in favor of this would be a violation of their oath.
You would think so, and so I am going to be front and center supporting this legislation. And I am almost as excited about this bill as I was about the state nullification resolution from last year. But it's a great bill, and Danny McCormick is like I said, a warrior when it comes to the Second Amendment. And this has got to pass, the Second Amendment Preservation Act.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. All right, next up is House Bill 721 by Representative Lauren Ventrella, and it would provide for the carrying of a concealed weapon by a certified teacher or school administrator on a school campus. And I think this is related to, Chris, this is for permitted carriers, right?
Absolutely. It is anybody who has a concealed carry permit, a teacher or administrator can conceal carry on campus. And very, very good bill. Unfortunately, contrary to what many do-gooders in our country think, many people who hate the Second Amendment and hate guns may feel, as we both know too well and only too tragically, oftentimes criminals bring guns onto campus or troubled students as well, and they commit great harm with those guns. And having an administrator or a teacher who's trained in concealed carry there really will provide and probably would have provided a lot of protection and saved a lot of lives of a lot of students if this had been the reality before. So I hope this passes, and I certainly hope that it will provide the kind of protection that I think it will provide to children if it's ever needed.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of Representative Ventrella for bringing this. And, Chris, I believe you reached out to her because I was just thinking, teachers don't get paid very much, and the fees for getting a permit are expensive. So perhaps the fees for teachers should be waived if they want to get a concealed carry permit, or perhaps the fees should be at least significantly discounted so that they can afford to do that to protect themselves and the students on campus.
And we asked her to do that, and we'll see if she does. Obviously, when it comes to the state, it's all about their money.
Yeah.
But I would like to think that they would have the attitude that you just expressed, which is that many teachers don't make a lot of money. We need this on the campuses to be able to protect children if need be. Let's waive the fees.
Yeah, I hope so. A lot of things can fall apart in appropriation, so I can understand if that might not be a first tactic, but it does make sense. Okay, the next two bills up, Chris, are about state preemption. The first one is House Bill 775 by Representative Neil Reiser. The second is Senate Bill 194 by Senator Miguez. It's already passed through the Senate, and it is another bill against federal overreach. It kind of ties in, I think, with Danny McCormick's bill.
Yeah, it is. It actually is a complement to Danny McCormick's bill, but it restricts any local ordinance, regulation or policy or procedure when it comes to guns and gun rights from being more restrictive than state law. And when it comes to the manufacture or the sale or the purchase, possession, carrying, storage, ownership of firearms or ammunition, the local regulations and ordinance can never be more restrictive than state law. And if they are, then at least Senator Miguez's bill requires them to repeal that regulation or that policy or that procedure. Very, very important. And also, importantly, if a citizen is injured due to a violation of this law because a local subdivision, a city police, a local sheriff or whatever decides to try to enforce a gun law that's more restrictive than state law, and it injures a citizen that way, then the citizen gets to sue in court. So those are the two main differences: the right to sue and the obligation that the local subdivisions, political subdivisions, have to repeal any law that is more restrictive than Louisiana law. That's what distinguishes Miguez's bill from Reiser's bill. And so that's why we're strong on Senator Miguez's preemption bill here.
Awesome. Next up is we're going to start with the bills now that we oppose on related to the Second Amendment. This one is House Bill 408 by Representative Mandy Landry. It provides for the creation of the quote-unquote Louisiana Voluntary Do Not Sell list, and according to myself, it is award-winning in its stupidity. She wins the award for the dumbest bill of the week. Possibly it could cover several weeks in its stupidity. Chris, tell us more about the bill.
So basically, what Representative Mandy Landry is inviting people who I can only construe based on the legislation are mentally ill or maybe somewhat emotionally unstable. She is inviting those individuals to voluntarily submit their names and their information to a list and requesting that they not be ever sold a gun. And if they have a gun, to go ahead and turn it in, and then make a polite request that they never be sold a gun again. But it's all voluntarily. So she's asking the mentally ill, the emotionally unstable, who may not be able to keep from harming themselves or others with a gun, to go and offer that information to the authority figures.
This is so stupid. This is really stupid, Chris. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you continue here in a second. But basically, we have these people. They're unstable. We want them to go self-report to the authorities. We're not asking them to, put themselves on a voluntary hold, right? Like a mental hold in a a unit or something. This is asking them to go tell on themselves that maybe I would want to use a gun. Don't sell me a gun. I don't have one, but don't sell me one if I ask you for one.
Right. It's all voluntary, and they're basically going in and admitting to the authority that I am BS crazy, and I don't trust myself with a gun, so please don't sell it to me. I'm sure there's going to be citizens coming out of the woodwork from all over the state, Danielle, pouring in to the state offices.
Please
and
don't
to the
sell me a
sheriff's
gun. Please don't sell me a gun.
Please don't sell me a gun. I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
Listen, Chris, the other thing that I saw in that bill, and you can correct me if I got this wrong for sure, but you can get off of the do not sell list anytime. Well, they are reporting you to ICE, and they will put you on every single federal registry as a do not sell, self-proclaimed do not sell volunteer. But if you ever want to get off of that list, no problem. Absolutely no problem. We'll get right to it right after we issue your Social Security card. Yeah, please.
Right. So Danielle, we live in a country where the federal ATC most recently tried to cancel all private gun transactions in the country. Totally unconstitutional. The federal administration, the federal government has never been more hostile to the Second Amendment, yet we're supposed to believe that people who have already declared basically their lunacy, their mental instability to public officials may at some point in the future go back and say, look, it's amazing how good I have felt over the past few weeks. I haven't tried to shoot anybody. I haven't tried to kill myself. I haven't hit myself in the head with a rock. I haven't beat myself against the hood of my car. I haven't done anything. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and formally request that you take my name off of the and remember, it was voluntary. It was voluntary, so you're going to go ahead and take me off now, right?
That's right.
I'm
take
sure
me
happen
off
very quickly.
Yeah. Well, also next up is like I like to say, they're coming for your cutlery next. So first you get to voluntarily give up your right to purchase a gun. Then you're going to be able to tell them you don't like your kitchen knives either. All right. This is so stupid. All right. Mandy Landry, good luck presenting this bill. You're going to get laughed out of committee, lady. Okay.
Oh, my Lord in heaven.
Oh, well, at least we can have some fun. All right.
Absolutely.
Next up, well, you have anything else on that?
No, I think I'm good there.
Okay.
I'm heading down there tomorrow to go get on the list.
Yeah. Well, maybe you get to see her.
No, I'm going to turn in my voluntary don't sell me card.
When you see her, you can just ask her if she could put you on the list. Just go ahead and put me on your list.
I'm just going to give her my card and ask her if she'll turn it in for me.
Great. Yeah, because that is really where this is headed, folks. If something like this were to happen, first you volunteer yourself, then your neighbors volunteer yourself, and then the government volunteers yourself. So
you better believe it.
Yeah, come on. Okay, next up is House Bill 498 by Representative Knox. This is also something very much worth opposing. It's creating more firearm-free zones by he basically invented something that he calls an entertainment zone, which would, Chris, correct me, it's going to include the entirety of downtown New Orleans and every single large venue that it encapsulates.
This is a what's called his bill a firearm-free zone. Now, we just passed concealed carry in Louisiana. We can conceal carry freely without government restrictions, and yet already we're seeing, not just in this bill but in other bills, government effort to restrict the right of concealed carry. Yes, it's in any major entertainment district, according to Representative Knox's bill, which includes the entire area of the city of New Orleans and the French Quarter, of course, the downtown development district in New Orleans, and the Ernest N. Morial Convention Center. All of those places would be completely off limits to concealed carry, because they are considered to be major entertainment districts. And I would assume, based upon some of the language of the bill, also that would probably include the Superdome as well. So it's just amazing to me. You know what I don't understand about legislation like this? We have a Second Amendment that imposes no restrictions on the right to keep and bear arms. The Constitution really doesn't even authorize the government to give government-issued permits. That's not constitutional either. But not only do they not understand that, even that's going too far, but do they not understand that New Orleans is the most dangerous city in the entire state? I mean, it's like saying, you can have a gun in Chicago, but you can't take it if you ever have to go to West Garfield Park, where there's 10 murders a month committed in there. And if you have to walk through there, you don't get to have your concealed carry, have your gun. It just doesn't make any sense. Why
I'm not
would
sure what they think guns are for.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I don't understand.
We know that criminals are carrying. We know that. It's obvious the crime numbers bear that out. So
yes, but Danielle, but you forget. Let me just say this. You forget. I heard this morning, in fact, I got a call from a criminal this morning on my phone, and he said, Mr. Alexander, do you not understand that we criminals, gun toters, we're poring over this legislation. We're poring over this legislation in order to determine what we can and cannot do.
Yeah,
do you think
I'm
going to be carrying
they
a
called
gun
you
in
to
the
tell
French
you,
Quarter?
Chris, I know. They called you to tell you that they've
They
been
called
waiting.
me to tell me.
Well, hold on. They called you to tell you they've been waiting all this time for this voluntary do not sell list to happen so that they could stop buying all these guns illegally.
Exactly. I mean, he called me and he said, Mr. Alexander, do you think we're trying to break the law? I mean, all we're trying to do, of course we're not going to carry a gun in the French Quarter if it's illegal. I mean, where did people get this whole idea that criminals that we're not going to obey the law? It's absolutely ridiculous. The moment Representative Knox, in fact, we've called Representative Knox to reassure him and say, look, the moment the law passes, the moment it's signed, our guns are being kicked to the curb. You don't have to worry about it anymore from us. Now, those law-abiding people out there, the ones who fancy themselves as never breaking the law, I don't know about them, but you're not going to have to worry about guns from us anymore.
Right, the criminals.
Isn't that reassuring?
Yeah. This is so backwards and so uninformed. And I can only say that it's basically communistic, because with the places that you need to protect yourself with a weapon are the very places that they want you to be completely defenseless. So anyway, we'll oppose this.
So perfectly said.
Chris,
perfectly said.
You'll be there in committee. You'll be testifying against this after you make fun of Mandy Landry. And I can't see this one passing, but we have to be there in strong opposition to it, because, we can't let one single thing like this slip through the cracks.
We cannot, and we're gonna make our voices heard for sure.
Yep. Okay. Next up is another dumb bill by Mandy Landry, and it is House Bill 627. This is about concealed carry at parades.
Yeah. Well, you already apparently in Louisiana, you already cannot carry a gun at a parade, concealed carry at a parade. I'm not sure whether this law preceded the new concealed carry legislation. I don't know. But the bottom line is this law ought to be repealed. But right now, the law in Louisiana is that you can't conceal carry your gun at a parade. That's already the law. But her legislation here goes even farther than that and says that you can't even conceal carry to a route of a parade, anywhere near a parade route, or within 1,000 feet of a parade route or a demonstration for which a permit has to be issued by the government. So you can't even go. Not only can you not have a concealed carry at a parade, you can't even you can't conceal carry within 1,000 feet of a parade. I don't know if you heard this news, Danielle. I just heard this a couple of days ago, and I was shocked, but of course it's true. You realize that criminals with guns, for some reason, and this is a fact of profound historic, really kind of a curiosity. Criminals with guns don't go to parades.
Yeah, definitely. They don't ever go
they
to
don't
crowd.
go anywhere near. For some reason, they're afraid of parades.
Yeah,
they're afraid of parades, and they don't like going around crowds with guns. And so I thought, and I was I'm not really too concerned about this law because I know that there's no need for a law-abiding citizen to be able to protect himself at a parade or near a parade because, like I said, for some reason, and I don't know why, maybe one of our listeners can let us know, criminals for some reason don't bring guns to parades. It's weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird. I'm just tired of the morons here. I'm tired of the morons. I'm tired of them chipping away at our constitutional rights. And Chris, I'm really glad you're just going to go in there and set them straight. I'm
going to go in there and set them straight, all right, and I'm looking forward to doing it. But because the closer you look at some of these bills, the more you just have to say, is there any logical progression going on in the brain? I mean, because it's just so backwards. But anyway, let's continue.
I did, in my excitement about Mandy Landry's stupid voluntary do not sell bill, I did pass over another bill that we wanted to mention, Chris, by Senator Miguez. It's Senate Bill 152. This one it's basically just providing some technical fixes, I believe, to the language of the civil liability bill that protects permitted concealed carriers. But we were also hoping that he could take it a little bit further.
Yeah, we want to take it a little bit further because this bill, he created a new law was created in the criminal session within Senate Bill 2. And that new law basically said that if you have a concealed carry permit, then you get certain liability protections that you don't get if you don't have a permit, even though permitless concealed carry is constitutional and legal. But he made a distinction in Senate Bill 2 between permitless concealed carry and permitted concealed carry. And he said that if you have a government-issued permit, then you get, again, certain liability protections that you don't get if you don't have a permit. Well, we've objected to that. We've been very clear with him that we think that is unduly discriminatory of permitless concealed carriers who don't want to be on a government watch list, who don't want to have to pay whatever you got to pay to get the government's permission with a permit to carry a gun. And so we think that's very unfair. So we're going to ask him, even though this particular bill is only bringing certain technical changes to the law, we're going to, because it deals with the same general statute, we're going to ask Senator Miguez to amend the law to allow any person who has completed the concealed permit certification course that is required by the state to have the same liability protections that someone gets who actually gets a permit from the state. So the only thing that the permitless carrier will not have is an actual permit issued by the government, and therefore his name will not be in a database, but he will go through the exact same training that a person who does get a government issued permit goes through. So we're going to ask that any person who has completed the concealed permit certification course required by the state gets the same civil immunity and liability protections that a permitted carrier has. And if they're only concerned about safety, If it's only about safety, if the only concern is making sure that people know how to use a gun and they're not out there playing John Wayne, then this should be no problem getting this law amended to allow this, because you can have your cake and eat it too, because it satisfies the concerns about people not being trained, but it also satisfies the concerns of Louisiana citizens who don't want to be in a government database and on a government watch list, and don't want the government knowing whether or not they own a gun, how many guns they own, because that's none of the government's business.
Yep. Well said, Chris. Well said. And there is one other sneaky bill related to the Second Amendment that got snuck into the Senate Local and Municipal Affairs Committee, which is a surprising place for a Second Amendment related bill. But it is Senate Bill 419 by Senator Talbot. And we were a little surprised to see him bringing this, but basically, he would make it illegal to have a gun in the French Quarter unless you have a permit. So he is creating two classes of legal gun carriers. Some have more rights than others. And the playing field is level at sporting events, because I don't think anyone's allowed to have a gun there under his bill.
Exactly. This is generally a good, conservative, thoughtful state senator. Senator Talbot, and I think he's a decent person personally. I absolutely do not for the life of me understand how he can bring a bill like this. This is a bill that prohibits anybody from carrying a gun, concealed carry, law-abiding citizen, at any venue at which an elementary, secondary, collegiate, interscholastic, or professional sporting event is taking place. No gun, okay? And further, the bill says that you can't conceal carry in the French Quarter. We're going back to another bill. We're alluding to another bill from earlier, except this is a conservative Republican bringing this one. No, you can't conceal carry in the French Quarter either unless you have a valid concealed handgun permit. So this bill will severely restrict constitutional concealed carry. I mean, it's just unbelievable. What was the purpose, Danielle, with all these bills we're seeing eviscerating, chipping away the right of concealed carry, and even permitted concealed carry in some cases? What was the purpose? What did we just celebrate a few weeks ago? Didn't we just celebrate the codification of the constitutional right under the Second Amendment, the unabridged right to keep and bear arms? Didn't we just pass that law without being able to do it without a permit?
Well, they didn't all mean it, apparently, Chris. And I think a lot of them didn't think that we would be looking that hard at these bills because, hooray, hooray, the thing we all wanted finally passed. Well, guess what, folks? There are new sheriffs in town, and we are paying attention. We are watching, and we're not the only ones. So buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride for people who are opposed to the Second Amendment.
I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a bumpy ride, and I'm going to object to all of these bills that are eviscerating the Second Amendment right to constitutional carry, because it's a slippery slope, as you have said before, Danielle, and it sets a terrible precedent.
Yeah, and either you believe in the Second Amendment or you don't. So just make it nice and clean, just like that.
Exactly. As Ted Nugent said, the Second Amendment is my concealed carry permit.
That's right. Well, good for him. I like that. Okay, next up, and I think this is the last set of bills, folks. They're all being heard in House Governmental Affairs. This is all still on Wednesday, and these are a big slate of constitutional amendments, so these are really important to pay attention to. And again, some are really good and some stink really badly. So we'll start out with the good ones, because we like to do that for y'all. The first one is House Bill 48 by Representative Bacala, and it would it's basically related to the way the appropriation bills are handled at the end of session, right, Chris?
Absolutely. This bill it's really, really a good one. This bill will provide that the House will always have at least 48 hours to review Senate amendments to a House bill that deals with money or the appropriating of money. You remember the absolute debacle that happened in the last hour of the session last year because the House did not have time to read all these Senate amendments to their bill, and everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they didn't have any time. They want to avoid that. So from now on, any appropriations bill that emanates from the House, originates in the House and goes over the Senate, and the Senate puts all kind of amendments on there and wants to spend all this money and change everything, and then send it back over to the House at the last minute so they don't have any time to really review it. Well, this bill will keep that from happening because it provides that the House will always have 48 hours to review any bill that comes back over from the Senate before they have to vote on it, if it's an appropriation bill. So that's very important to give them that kind of time. And then HB 49, Danielle, would allow the House to extend the legislative session by 2 days at a time if they need to. So to give them, like if let's say they're in the last 3 hours of a legislative session and they don't have any time left, well, in order to accommodate that new 48-hour rule, they could extend the legislative session itself by 2 days. So HB 48 and HB 49 are both very good bills and will really allow the House at least some time to really review some of these amendments to appropriations bills.
Yeah, I like that bill. I'm not really in favor of ever extending the session because, let's be honest, it's long enough as it is. But I think this provides a nice protection from some of those dirty tricks that the last legislature was wanting to play. And did play quite effectively, I must add.
And this is, and again, this, by the way, just so you know, this is, as you mentioned earlier, this is a constitutional amendment. So if it passes it needs 2/3 passage in order to go to the people, I believe. And then if it passes 2/3 in both houses, it'll go to the people in a statewide vote in November.
Awesome. Next up is House Bill 111 by Representative Mike Bayham, and we mentioned this one at the top of the legislative session, not the podcast session. And it would provide for gubernatorial term limits, so we can maybe chip away at that imperial governorship.
Right now, the Constitution says that a person who has served as governor for more than 1.5 terms in 2 consecutive terms. 2 consecutive terms shall not be elected governor for another term. This proposed constitutional amendment says that a person who has served as governor for more than 1.5 terms shall not be elected governor, period. So the bottom line is, in other words, a person can't serve as governor and then, or serve as 2 terms as governor and then go do something else for a few years and then come back and run again. You can't do that anymore. You get a total of 2 terms, period. So hopefully this will pass. 2 terms is enough.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great people in this state. We have a lot of very highly skilled, highly competent leaders in this state. We don't need to consolidate power in the hands of 2 or 3 or 4 people in any given person's lifetime. I think we can do better than that. We can do better than that.
We can do a lot better. We can do a lot better.
The next 2 constitutional amendments, Chris, are being brought by Representative Shammerhorn. They are HB 241 and 273, and they are both related to local officials.
Right, and these the first bill, 241, as you said, also a constitutional amendment, simply allows that if the legislature authorizes a pay increase for local officials, like in a local jurisdiction, they will only get that pay increase if it is approved by the voters within that jurisdiction. So I think it's a really good bill, and it acknowledges and recognizes local authority. So the legislature would just authorize a pay increase, but the local voters would have to approve it on their own, in their own vote before it's ratified. They would have to ratify it essentially, which is good. And that's a constitutional amendment. And the other one simply provides for term limits for local officials. I believe in term limits across the board. And I believe that you would agree with me on that, Danielle.
Yeah, I didn't ever really think too much about term limits, but the more that you look at the way the swamp operates, the more you realize that it's the same people who are holding on to power that tend to cause a lot of problems. So I think fresh, new people, new ideas is good. This is meant to be a short-term duty and service to your fellow citizens. So get in, do the job, and get on out and go back to your normal life. It doesn't need to be a long-term thing.
And you've mentioned, Danielle, to me, that, and I'm sure this exists in every local municipality across the state, not just in Terrebonne Parish, but I know that there's some corruption down there and in many other places as well. But this proposed constitutional amendment specifically would limit the parish president, the mayor, or a member of a municipal governing authority, to 2.5 terms total. And that's it. So they can't serve for 30 years. They can't serve for 20 or 25 years. It's 2.5 terms, and then you're done. And so I think that it is good. It helps to keep things more clean and honest and less prone to corruption.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, the next three are all being brought by Representative Green. We oppose all three of them. I think they're rotten. The first one, Chris, this is so ridiculous and so transparent in a way. So the idea that Representative Green is bringing forward is that we need to change the timing of our elections for statewide officials, I believe, and for the legislature so that it coincides with the congressional election calendar. And what that would do by virtue of what he's trying to accomplish is extend the current legislature's term by 2 years. So that's 2 years of them not being elected officials, but holding elected office.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the point is of this. Why do
he's just having so much fun? He's just having a time of his life.
He's having a ball. But there's no rhyme or reason to it. Why do the state legislators have to have the same cycle as federal elected officials? I mean, who said that has to be the case? I don't quite understand that. I don't think there's any need for this constitutional amendment unless somebody can tell me how this makes sense. Then there's no way we're going to support this. And I hope people understand how ridiculous this is.
Yeah, the next one may exceed it in its ridiculousness. It would create a compensation commission to provide for the salary and other compensation of elected officials and an automatic adjustment at the beginning of each new term of office. And Chris, I mean, our point, we talked about this a lot this afternoon. Why do they need a commission to give themselves a pay raise? So we're going to be paying for maybe not the time of the commission, but we'll be paying for reasonable expenses of a commission. And why can't
Absolutely.
The people who look at the numbers for the rest of the state just look at the numbers for the stinking elected officials? They can certainly, I bet they can pull a few spreadsheets. They could probably say, wow, what's the national average for elected officials at my level at the legislature? And maybe we'll just come up with a median number, and or maybe a little bit higher than the median number if Kyle Green's involved, and rebalance it based on that and put it to the public for a vote in November. Why do we need a commission to do that?
Amen. We don't a 15-man commission sitting around talking about trying to figure out how to give legislators a raise. This could be done with a laptop, a spreadsheet, and someone who's relatively good with numbers and knows how to compare, as you said, the salaries from officials from different states. This is just classic bureaucratic nonsense that serves no purpose and yet and will burden the taxpayers again. There's no need for it. It's like, just figure out how to do this in a way that it actually makes some sense, instead of people sitting around at a table talking to each other. I mean, it's like, please, we can do better than this.
Yeah. And, we do believe that the legislature is relatively lowly paid. Obviously, it's one of the lowest, if not the lowest in the nation. I do, I think we don't want to necessarily incentivize people with pay. I like it whenever people who, have successful businesses want to go into the legislature. And it's not people looking for a paycheck. So I don't want to create that kind of job incentive with this. But I think, legislators are doing hard work and they are sacrificing a lot. So I think they should get a reasonable pay. And I'm not opposed to it in general.
I'm absolutely not against a pay raise for legislators. And I don't think you are. I just don't think we need a 15-person commission to sit around and talk about it. Just figure it out. Put pen to paper and figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you, Chris, the constitutional amendment to create a compensation commission is just so that the commission is the one providing the salary and not the people. And I think the people need to vote on the legislature salary. I really do.
The actual figure.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, last up by Representative Green. This one looks fairly innocuous, but I really hate it. It would provide that the governor and lieutenant governor are elected jointly, like on a ticket. And when you think about it, okay, no big deal. But then you think about the state of Louisiana, and our lieutenant governor is basically a commissioner of tourism. For all intents and purposes. So I don't know why they need to be elected on a ticket. They serve very different purposes and have very different tasks. And the other thing is, if we start electing two officials on a single ticket that the governor is at the top of, doesn't that just further consolidate the governor's power in this state where we are trying to claw back power from the governor and give it back to the people?
Absolutely, it will do just that. It will certainly do nothing to dilute his power. Number one, having him run on the same ticket with the lieutenant governor, and secondly, why is this even necessary? That's my question. What's the point? What advantage does it serve to have the governor and the lieutenant governor serving? Is it cheaper? Is it less burdensome on the Secretary of State somehow?
Maybe
to have them
we have to push one less button when we go into the voting booth.
Push one less button in the voting booth. What if you happen to like the governor, but you can't stand or don't like his running mate, or vice versa? I just think I kind of like that part of the way it's done, and I don't see any reason to have to change it. This looks like one of those bills where someone said the other day that, someone told me that, I filed 100 bills, 80 bills in the last session. I filed 80 bills. And that's kind of how some of them measure their value, is how many bills they filed. And this looks like one that he was just putting out there to try to maybe add to his number, because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, it certainly doesn't add any value. So sorry, Rep. Green, but we're across the board opposing your constitutional amendments. And maybe it's worth me just mentioning, as we kind of round out the bills that we have walked through, an epic volume, a tome of bills that we've walked through. This is just a sample. We actually scratched some from our list, a fair few from our list, for what we would even talk about in these episodes. So, it's a lot to keep track of. It's a lot of other good bills that are coming that just didn't make the cut today. A lot of bad bills, not a lot of bad bills, maybe a lot, but a few that we just didn't raise in this context, but we will be keeping eyes on. So, the floodgates have opened and the bills are all pouring in.
Gosh, have they? And we would be on the podcast for another hour if we hadn't cut some bills.
I know. God help us, and God help the listeners.
In fact, we could go back and you want to go? You want to
start at the top?
Bills now?
Just kidding.
You start at the top again.
Oh,
I'm with you. I'm game. But anyway, what a great experience to be with you, Danielle, and what a great opportunity to go through a number of very, very important bills. We're going to have a great week. I have no doubt about that. And I'm just so thankful for our listeners, for the State of Freedom supporters and donors, for all the people who are helping us to elevate our game, broaden our voice throughout the state, and continue to be the voice of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana. We have one loyalty. Well, two loyalties.
3 loyalties.
To the citizens and to the Constitution. and that is it.
And God.
Well, obviously God, because without God, there is no citizen and there is no Constitution.
Well, that's well said.
He's absolutely the genesis of everything, for sure. But I just I just want to thank our supporters and our listeners to State of Freedom and encourage continued support.
Yeah, and if people are looking for a way to support us, reach out. You can go to State of Freedom's website, that's freedomstate.us, and you can support us that way. You can reach out to us on there and let us know about legislation that you're following, anything that's interesting to you that we maybe have not highlighted. And you can also, if you're interested in advertising your business, or if you have a small business you want on our Patriot page on the website, you can reach out about all of those things on the website. And also, please go visit LACAG.org. You should absolutely be bookmarking the Action Center so you can stay on top of things that are happening minute by minute. I know this is a lot to take in, but you can go and browse and see what's important to you and take action on those items. We'll be updating these things pretty much daily. So as things move, they should be cycling on that site. And you can also support us on LACAG.org as well. You can join as a member, or you can make a one-time donation. We really welcome your support. It's absolutely appreciated, and it's needed to keep us going.
And we are slowly but surely leveling the playing field in the legislature. And we want you to be able to sleep well at night knowing that we are the German shepherds of the citizens of Louisiana in the legislature. We will continue to be that each and every day, continue to develop and grow. And with God's grace, with God's blessing, with daily courage and relentless effort, Danielle, each day we will take another step to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana.
Amen. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to the State of Freedom, LLC, at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.